The Kansas City Royals, they're in a tough spot. It's time for a stadium upgrade, but the price tag's causing a stir. Reports say the new stadium could cost up to $2 billion. And that figure alone has sparked serious backlash from fans, city officials, and taxpayers alike. So what's really going on? And why is this new ballpark at the center of so much drama? Stick around to find out. The big stadium dream that sparked a fight. So here's how it all kicked off. The Royals have their home at Kauffman Stadium since 1973. Right next door to Arrowhead, where the Chiefs play. Together, they make up what's called the Truman Sports Complex, which has been the heart of KC sports for over half a century. But time hasn't exactly been kind to this place. The pipes are old, the seating's outdated, and forget fancy LED screens or rooftop bars. That is not happening here. So, what do the Royals want to do? Blow it all up and start fresh? Not literally, but they are aiming big. Like $2 billion big. The idea is to build a brand new, shiny downtown stadium, along with other restaurants, bars, shops, green spaces, apartments, and all that other cool stuff you see in a modern sports and entertainment district. Think of it like KC's own version of LA Live or the Battery in Atlanta. That's the goal. And the Royals aren't just doing this on a whim. They've had powerhouse architects and consultants like Populous looking at all the options, and guess what? They claim it would actually cost more to renovate the old stadium than to actually build a new one. According to their math, renovating Kauffman would be over $1 billion. But that's not all, as they reckon it would take an extra 2 years to complete. Plus, nearly 70% of the place would still need to be replaced. So in their minds, it just makes more sense to go new. They even scoped out 14 different sites downtown and say they're not leaving the city. But here's where things start getting messy. Because while the Royals keep saying the majority of the funding will come from private investors and ownership groups, that's not the whole story. They still need public money, talking about tax incentives, infrastructure help, that sort of thing. And just like that, the stadium turns now into a massive debate. Folks start asking, wait a minute, didn't we just say no to this? And it's true. Jackson County voters already rejected a plan that would have used a sales tax to fund both the Royal Stadium and the renovations for Arrowhead. We'll get to that in a little bit. But even after that clear no, here come the teams again still pushing. And the Royals, particularly, are not backing down. So you may think that the Chiefs would be all over this too, but they've been a bit quieter. They still have plans to upgrade Arrowhead and have not been as loud about leaving. Still, the clock is ticking. The lease on Truman Complex runs out in 2031. And even though that seems like a long way off, it's really not, because when it comes to billion-dollar stadium projects, that's like tomorrow. So what happens when the Royals say, hey, we're only asking for some help, and the taxpayers say, help yourself? Well, that's when the whole thing becomes a fight. You got city officials trying to keep the teams in town, state politicians butting in with last-minute bills, and fans stuck in the middle trying to figure out what's really going on. And to top it off, Kansas sitting right across the border saying, hey, if Missouri won't help you, maybe we will. So it's not just about baseball or football right now. It's turned into a full-blown political and economic showdown, one that's about pride, money, power, and who's going to pay for a stadium that may look amazing but won't be cheap. And whether Kansas City ends up winning or losing depends on who bends first. Taxpayer backlash and the vote that blew everything up. Now let's talk about the moment that stopped everything in its tracks. Back in April of last year, Jackson County voters had one big question in front of them. Should public tax money be used to help build a new Royal Stadium and upgrade Arrowhead for the Chiefs? You'd think given how much people love their teams, this would be a slam dunk. But no, the answer came back loud, clear, and pretty brutal. Voters said no, and not just barely. They shut it down pretty hard. That one vote flipped the whole conversation. Up until then, it seemed like the Royals were cruising along with their plans, the Chiefs were exploring their options, and local leaders were acting like it was just a matter of time before everything got approved. But people had other ideas, and that rejection hit like a gut punch. It didn't just shock the teams, it took the whole political machine. Suddenly, all those polished plans, pretty renderings, and confident press conferences didn't mean anything. Fans were saying, look, we love our teams, we want them to stay, but we're not paying for all that. Not when groceries cost this much, rent's going up, and schools still need help. In short, people were done with public funding for private stadiums. Now, you'd think a no vote would mean that's the end of the story, but no, the Royals started floating other options, like possibly moving out of Jackson County. One place that's come up more than once is North Kansas City. And not just because it sounds cooler, it's a different county, different voters, and a possibly different deal. Then rumors started flying that the Chiefs could jump ship entirely and head over to Kansas. Yes, Kansas, the rival state. Pretty wild, right? And then out of nowhere, Missouri's governor, Mike Kehoe, swoops in with this last-minute plan. No public hearings, no town halls, just a bill flying through the House so fast it probably didn't even hit the ground. It would let the state throw in tax credits and bonds to help with the stadium projects, potentially covering up to half the cost. And it didn't even tie the teams to specific locations. Just, here's some money, let us know. But here's the thing, when that bill hit the Senate, it crashed and burned. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle were mad, not just because of the cost, which was massive, but because the whole thing felt kind of shady and a bit rushed. One senator straight up said that they were going to waste time on what's called a special interest tax credit, and that bill got pulled before it could even get a vote. People were especially mad because just days earlier, the House had slashed $500 million in construction spending across the state. Of course, it's cutting schools and roads, but greenlighting stadiums, that's not sitting right with anybody. So now stadium drama is in a bit of a limbo. The Royals are still dreaming big, the Chiefs are playing it cool, and the voters are watching closely, waiting to see who's going to listen this time. Because if history tells us anything, Kansas City loves their teams, but does not love surprises, rush deals, or getting left out of the conversation. The Royals push for a downtown ballpark and why they say it's necessary. Now, let's get into why the Royals are so fired up about building a brand new stadium right in the middle of downtown Kansas City. Because at first glance, it kind of sounds like they're just trying to ditch an old ballpark and cash in on some fancy real estate. But according to the team, that's not what this is about at all. Royals say Kauffman Stadium, as iconic and as beloved as it might be, is simply too far gone. Built back in 1973, it's been holding on for over 50 years. That is half a century of wear and tear. And while some fans have a soft spot for the K, the Royals claim that keeping it alive would cost a fortune. They've looked at the numbers. As mentioned before, renovating it would take over $1 billion. And not only is that more expensive than building a whole new stadium from scratch, it would also drag on for years and force them to rebuild nearly 70% of the whole place anyway. So from their point of view, this isn't nostalgia versus progress, it's just common sense. But the plan isn't just to build a slightly newer version of what they already have. They want to bring the action to downtown Kansas City. Right now, the Royals are tucked away out at the Truman Sports Complex, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's not connected to restaurants, bars, shops, or really any kind of nightlife. And that means fans show up, watch the game, and go home. No extra spending, no community buzz, and no economic ripple effect. That's a big reason the Royals are pushing for a downtown move. They think if they set up shop right in the city center, they can totally transform the game day experience. Imagine walking from your apartment to the ballpark, getting food before the game, sticking around after for drinks, and maybe doing some shopping. The Royals see the new stadium as a magnet for energy, tourists, and money. Not just during the season, but year-round. John Sherman, the team's chairman and CEO, keeps saying this isn't just about baseball. He's talking about something much bigger. The new stadium wouldn't just be a place to play 81 games a year. It would be a community hub, part of a $2 billion project that includes parks, housing, hotels, and entertainment spaces. Sherman says they're thinking about the next 50 years, not just the next 5. He wants the Royals to grow with Kansas City, not stay stuck in the past while the rest of the world moves on. Having said that, it's not like they're paying for this all on their own. Sherman says most of the money will come from private investors in the ownership group, but they're still looking for help. That means tax breaks, state aid, and some public funding. But like we already pointed out, that's where the tension comes in, because a lot of people in Missouri are asking, why should taxpayers pitch in and build a stadium for a billionaire owner? And that's a fair question. It's one that's already gotten a lot of pushback, so now the Royals are trying to get creative. They've looked at over a dozen sites downtown. They're holding public meetings and making their case. But in the end, if they don't find enough support in Missouri, Kansas is right across the river with open arms and a lot of incentives, so the pressure is on. The Chiefs are watching closely, and they could leave too. All right, switching gears and talking football now, because while the Royals are getting all the headlines with their big downtown dreams, the Chiefs are quietly watching from the sidelines, and depending on how this plays out, they might be next in line to make a massive move. Here's the situation. The Chiefs play right next door to the Royals at Arrowhead Stadium, which is also part of the Truman Sports Complex. And just like Kauffman, Arrowhead's getting up there in years. It opened in 1972, which makes it one of the oldest stadiums in the NFL. Right now, it's still loud, still iconic, and still packed on Sundays, but let's be honest, the clock is ticking. The Chiefs' lease runs out in 2031, same as the Royals, and that means they're on the same timeline when it comes to deciding the future. So if the Royals end up leaving Truman Sports Complex, that throws a wrench into everything. Suddenly, the Chiefs are left all alone in this giant, aging facility with no baseball partner to help share the costs. If this happens, renovating or replacing Arrowhead becomes way more expensive and way more complicated. And here's where things get interesting. Even though the Chiefs haven't made a huge fuss publicly, they've been exploring their options behind the scenes. Some folks close to the team say they're open to staying at Arrowhead and fixing it up. Others think they're eyeing Kansas too, and honestly, who can blame them? Kansas already passed a law that would let them use bonds to cover up to 70% of the cost of a new stadium if the Chiefs jumped across state lines. That's not a friendly offer. That's a full-blown bribe. And if you're Chiefs ownership, you gotta at least consider it. Stadium costs are gonna be huge no matter what. So if one side's offering to cover most of that and the other one keeps getting caught in this political gridlock, the choice starts to look pretty obvious. Now, let's not get it twisted. Chiefs love Kansas City. This is the town that made them who they are. Even the fans are some of the most loyal in the league. But business is business, and if Missouri can't figure out a way to make the stadium deal work, Kansas might be the more attractive long-term home. Losing the Royals would sting, but losing the Chiefs, a total heartbreaker. Governor Kehoe knows this too, which is why he's been trying so hard to push through the stadium proposal. He's calling it a generational investment, saying he'd bring lawmakers back for a special session if that's what it takes. But here's the problem. The Missouri Senate isn't playing along. They're angry that this deal got rushed through without any hearings. They're worried about the cost, and they're dealing with other controversial bills too. And stadium funding isn't exactly a top priority. So everything's stuck in this limbo. The Royals are pushing, the Chiefs are watching, Kansas is waiting, and Missouri's stuck. The next few months are going to be huge because one wrong move, one more delay, and KC could go from having two iconic teams to having none. What happens next and why this fight is far from over? So what now? Well, here's the thing. Nothing's actually been decided yet. No shovels in the ground, no contracts signed, no final plans approved. Just a whole lot of arguing, finger-pointing, and political maneuver. And if you think that means the story's dying down, think again. This whole stadium mess is only heating up. Both the Royals and the Chiefs are still under lease at the Truman Sports Complex through 2031. And that sounds like a lot of time, but in stadium years, it's no time at all because it takes years to design, approve, and build these mega projects. So if anything's going to be ready by the time those leases run out, the clock isn't just ticking, it's blaring like a fire alarm. But wait, what happens to the Truman Sports Complex if both teams leave? Trust me, this is the doomsday option nobody in Kansas City wants to think about, but it's very real. If both teams move out, we're not just talking about two empty stadiums. We're talking about 200-plus acres of concrete, steel, and heartbreak just sitting there. Arrowhead and Kauffman would become giant, crumbling monuments of what used to be. We're talking haunting reminders of tailgates, touchdowns, home runs, just happier times. And let's not forget the complex isn't in some random cornfield. It's in the heart of Jackson County. You can't just let that land rot for the next 20 years. So what then? Bulldoze it? Redevelop it into housing? A casino? An Amazon warehouse? Honestly, nobody knows. And that uncertainty is terrifying for locals, business owners, and everyone invested in the area. Plus, cleaning up and redeveloping the site would cost millions, if not hundreds of millions. And you know who's paying for that, right? Probably you, dear taxpayer. You thought the stadium vote was controversial? Wait till folks get wind of the billion-dollar revitalization plan just to make something out of nothing. And here's the kicker. If the teams leave and the land just sits there, that's not just an eyesore. That's lost revenue, lost tourism, lost jobs, and most of all, lost identity. KC, without the Truman Sports Complex, that's like a barbecue without burnt ends. It just does not feel right. Now the Royals have made one thing clear. They want a brand new downtown ballpark. But like we told you, renovating Kauffman would actually cost more than building a shiny new one from scratch. And that sounds a bit crazy until you realize the stadium is over 50 years and about 70% of it would have to get ripped out and redone anyway. They looked at more than a dozen sites downtown and still haven't locked one in. That alone is a red flag because without a location, you can't finalize any serious plans. And without a serious plan, it's impossible to know how much this thing's going to cost, who's paying for it, and when it's all going to be ready. All in all, we got to remember that the Royals and Chiefs aren't just teams. They're a huge part of the city's identity. They bring people together. They're woven into family traditions, memories, and local pride. Messing with where they play or how their stadiums get built hits way deeper than just dollars and cents. It stirs up emotions, loyalty, and history. And that's exactly why this fight's not going away anytime soon. The decisions being made right now are going to shape KC for decades. I'm talking about the stadiums, the neighborhoods around them, the way the city looks and feels, and who's going to benefit from it all. There's just too much on the line for this to all quietly fade away. So buckle up, because this story isn't even close to being done. We're going to see more proposals, more back and forth, more headlines, and maybe a few surprises. Will the team stay in Missouri? Will Kansas steal one of them away? Or will taxpayers support another stadium deal? Right now, nobody knows. But one thing's for sure, everyone's watching, and no matter how it ends, this is going to be one wild ride. Now, head to the comments and tell us what you think about Kansas City's stadium drama. We're committed to releasing 2 videos a week. Like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more visionary builds.